So today we're going to look at kind of a non-standard Easter approach, and we're going to talk about the resurrection that happened a couple days before Jesus raised from the dead. What? Yes. So let's go back to the situation, and we'll see. We're back to, this is big Jacques Tissot morning. Someone said to me the other day, why do you keep putting up Jacques Cousteau pictures? I go, no, it's not Jacques Cousteau. Of course, you have to be older to know who Jacques Cousteau is, but no, Jacques Tissot, who did pictures actually in the Promised Land. He went to Israel, went to the actual sites of things, did sketches of the geography and the things that are around there, and then just placed ancient people in the pictures. So this is what he did. So we're back to this picture. This actually is a very large picture, so it's hard to see. So if I kind of go and I sort of scan my way down, you can see this is a procession coming up to the cross. For some reason, Tissot figured that Jesus had to have a better cross than everyone else. If better is the word, I don't know if better is the word for it. Different cross. But then when they got to the top of this hill, and it had to be a pronounced location, so as people walked through the area, they would see this, because crucifixions were meant to be warnings from the Roman dignitaries about if you do things wrong, this will happen to you. So they were like billboard locations. They're visible, they're prominent, they're by natural walkways, so you could see it. So they came to the top of this hill, and of course they put the cross for Jesus there, as well as the cross for two robbers up there. And Luke tells us in Luke 23, verse 33, when they came to the place that is called the Skull, they were there. They crucified him and the criminals, one on his right and one on his left. It's interesting, and you can just think about this for a while. I don't have an answer to this question. But all the Gospels make a distinction about the fact that Jesus was in the center of two. Not on the edge, on one on the right side or left side. He was in the center between two, on the right and left. It's an interesting detail that they're all very careful to announce. There's actually kind of a symbolic reason for that, and I'll postulate that at the end. But it's kind of an interesting thing. Whenever the Gospel writers mention one seemingly innocuous detail, and they all make sure they say it. There's something in that. So you need to stop and say, they're all saying this, so I'm not getting it. So anyway, this is what we have. This is the picture we have today, and this is where we're going to spend our time, actually, in the crucifixion up here. Well, there was taunting, of course, from the crowds, and the different gospel writers talk about this taunting. And the taunting happened primarily because during Jesus' ministry, it was not lost on the people who listened to Jesus what he was claiming about himself. Today, people will say Jesus never claimed to be anything really a big deal. We made that up after the fact. And yet the taunting happened because people knew that Jesus had claimed to be something very special, the Son of God. And so how did you end up on a cross? See, that's the taunting. So they understood the message Jesus had. Here's some of it from Matthew's gospel. You who would destroy the temple and rebuild it in 3 days, save yourself. If you are the Son of God, come down from the cross. So see, they got it. They got what he was saying. He wasn't just a nice preacher who taught nice moral stories. I mean, he claimed to be the Son of God. Almost, he had to escape from some situation so he wouldn't be prematurely killed because of that. He had to tell people early in his ministry, don't tell anyone that you know who I am, because if they told, it would light a fuse that would get him killed too quickly. So it was very clear, and even in the taunting comes because Jesus made gigantic claims, and they got it. And now they're saying, because they've been looking for reasons to be critical of Jesus' entire ministry, now look, see where this has gotten you? You're crucified. So if you are the Son of God, come on down right now, and then we'll believe. Or we heard you say that if the temple will be destroyed, you're going to rebuild it in 3 days. Okay, if you can do that, then why don't you save yourself? So these statements he made and the reality of the cross to them is a reason to completely disprove who Jesus is. Now, we know in retrospect that Jesus could have easily snapped his fingers, well, if he could, blinked his eyes, and completely eradicated the situation, the people who were taunting him. So he's there voluntarily. He's there voluntarily. Jesus did not trip on some accidental offense with the authorities, and that got him killed. He should have kept his mouth shut. No, this was a deliberate thing he did. And he knew it was coming, and he warned the apostles over and over again. I'm going into Jerusalem. They're going to take me. They're going to kill me. That's coming up. And the apostles were, what? So this is where we are. This is the taunting from Matthew. You would destroy the temple. Now, someone had heard Jesus talking about the temple when someone had remarked, aren't these stones great? Isn't this a great building? And then Jesus switched just a little bit and said, yes, but if you take down this temple, talking about his body, it'll come back in 3 days. And so they thought he was talking about the legitimate temple. And so it makes sense. That misunderstanding is part of the understanding where Jesus wanted to redirect their attention away from the grandeur of the limestone temple and toward him as the king who's come. So they're pretty sure he's not the king anymore because look at this. Here's another taunt from Matthew 27. He saved others. He saved others. He cannot save himself. So he is the king of Israel. We'll let him come down now from the cross and we'll believe in him. Well, how recently had Jesus saved someone? Lazarus. Just very recently. Days, weeks. I mean, it's really, really recently. And it was such a big public splash that the Pharisees, who had already had it up to their eyeballs with Jesus and his popularity and the numbers of people following him, they decided that probably his best proponent for who Jesus was going to be Lazarus. Because Lazarus could walk around and say, well, I was dead and now I'm alive. Who did this to you? Jesus did. So they realized, well, this Lazarus guy, he's a threat. So they put a price on Lazarus' head just prior to this, because Lazarus was a walking testimony to what Jesus is. He's the Messiah. He's the Son of God. He saved others, a.k.a. Lazarus, and now he can't save himself? Huh? He's the king of Israel. By the way, over his head was a sign that said King of the Jews, right? He's the king of Israel. Well, we don't believe that, but if he comes down like right now, we'll believe. So come on down, Jesus, we'll believe if you come down. And he didn't. Taunts, because Jesus had made a claim to be something who he was, and the people could not square that fact with the fact that he was the Son of God, but on a cross. And then here in Matthew's gospel, he tells us that not only the crowd that was around the cross was doing this taunting, but the two thieves, the two crooks that were with him, were also doing this. Both of them. Matthew 27:44. And the robbers who were crucified with him also reviled him in the same way. Both of them were. So here's Jesus on the cross, intentionally came to die on our behalf, to die for the people who were taunting him, between two criminals, and the two criminals themselves who are minutes or hours away from dying. They're taunting Jesus. So you're the guy, why don't you save us? Get us off the cross. You're the guy, but you're in the same. We're just robbers, we're just thieves, we're just criminals. We deserve this. But you claim to be something really hot, and now you're on the cross too? Now, when I put myself in Jesus' shoes, I don't think I could have taken that taunting without at least throwing a couple of thunderbolts. Just a little bit. Maybe just even sizzled some sparks off my fingertips or something. I mean, just enough. I mean, it's just the whole idea of taking that kind of taunting when you are actually the creator of the universe. And everything is in your hands. Everything is made for you and by you, and it's coming to you. I mean, everything. And to take that kind of taunting and to be silent. And from the two thieves as well, who deserved it. Well, the thieves hurled their own stuff. Here's from one of them, from Luke 23. So, are you not the Messiah? Are you not the Messiah, which is the generations promised Savior of the Jews? The one who was going to come with might and power, who was going to correct every injustice, who was going to put away all the enemies of Israel. So they had huge expectations of the Messiah. Are you not the Messiah? Is that what people are saying? Are you not the Messiah? Well, if you are, well, save yourself and us. Aren't you the Messiah? If you are capable, according to scriptures, to save Israel from Rome, then why can't you save yourself from the cross? Doesn't make any sense. But the other criminal talked to the other criminal and said, do you not fear God, since you're under the same sentence of condemnation? Now this is kind of a funny statement. You got to stop and think for a second. Is he saying to the other criminal, well, aren't you afraid of God? You're going to die in a second? Well, that's exactly what he's saying. But why would the taunt from that criminal be something that this guy's warning him about? Unless this criminal thinks there's something more to Jesus than the other criminal does. See what I'm saying? He would have just joined in, but he says, wait a second. You're taunting someone who's the Son of God? Don't you understand that in a few minutes we're all going to be dead? And you're going to face God? And you're under this condemnation that I'm under? Do you realize that teasing God before you die is a bad idea? So you see, it doesn't make any sense unless this criminal is changing his mind about who Jesus is. See? Instead, he would just look at Jesus as being some kind of unwitting dupe or something who just got caught up in the anger and the violence of the day. But at this point, he's saying to the other criminal, you better watch out. You're taunting and teasing something you don't understand. So this criminal's changing his mind. But wait a second. Did the other gospel say that they were both taunting Jesus? Yes, they were. At the beginning, they were both taunting Jesus. Both were taunting Jesus. Hurling insults that we don't know about, but they were doing it as well. Now, this guy's changing his mind, which brings up a fascinating question. This is what I want us to focus on today. Why is he changing his mind? What is he seeing while he's in pain and suffering on the cross that's changing his mind? What possibly could he see that he would change his mind from taunting Jesus, who looks like an imposter just caught up in a political firestorm that got him killed, and just saying, wait, there's something more going on here. Now, I don't have the answer to that question, but it's been a question that I've pondered every time we come to Resurrection Sunday. Every time we come to this time of year, I think, what is it that this criminal saw from his perspective, from Jesus' reaction, from what people were saying, that caused him to change his mind about who he thought Jesus was? That's a fascinating question. Because if I was the writer of these Gospels, I would explain that. Because right here, I would add to this, so don't you fear God? You're under the same sentence of condemnation. We're going to be dead pretty soon. And by the way, I've been watching this, and I've been watching this guy, and I want to let you know that this guy looks like maybe he's what he says he is. We need to really watch out. You don't want to tease this guy. I think he can vaporize us. I'd expand this thing a little bit more. And not only that, and he would tell us his becauses, but God doesn't give us his becauses. He just changes by what he sees with Jesus on a cross and the reaction of the crowds. Let's follow him a little bit more. Don't you fear God, since you're under the same sentence of condemnation? And we indeed we're condemned justly, for we're receiving the due reward of our deeds. We're here because we did bad stuff. You need to fear God. Not only for the things you've done, but this thing you're doing right now, teasing this guy, But we're here justly. We earn this sentence. So right here, he's starting to let us know that he's changed his mind about whether Jesus deserved to be on the cross or not. See that? He's changing right in front of our very eyes. We indeed justly are receiving the due reward for our deeds, but I don't think this guy is. You can almost watch his brain change. And then he says this man has done nothing wrong. How does he know that? Or is he just asserting that? Or he believes that, but just on the basis of what he saw on the cross, how can he make that kind of a statement? Well, of course, he can't really capsulize the entire 3 years of Jesus' public ministry and say, well, I watched this guy for all these years. He's done nothing wrong. He may have been someone who did that. We don't know. We just don't know. So this statement he's making right here might be as much on the basis of what he's currently undergoing, what Jesus is undergoing, as much as the history of Jesus' ministry. We don't know. But he's making the point to the other criminal, look, we deserve to be on these crosses. This is a just thing. We know we did wrong. But this guy, I don't think he's done anything wrong. And I think even that particular day, he could probably tell that's true. And why? Well, people who are sentenced to long prison sentences or sentenced to death, oftentimes to the very end will assert their innocence. He says, even if they've done the act, what they'll do is they'll justify the act, as heinous as it is, and say, well, okay, so I did murder that person. But they had it coming. I'm in the right, they're in the wrong. I'm just bringing a little justice to the society that the justice system's not bringing. So I'm just bringing a little bit faster. So what's wrong with that? So you see, you justify all the way through it. I think there was nothing in Jesus' mouth that justified himself while he went to the cross and hung there. I don't think he fought it at all. We have no recording of him saying anything in the process of that. He doesn't object and say this is totally unfair. What have I done wrong? What are the charges, Your Honor, that you're bringing against me? He doesn't do that. Now we see him talk with Caiaphas and with Annas, who have the religious connections, religious authorities. They have brief conversations with them. He has a longer conversation with Pilate twice, actually. That conversation, we see him doing it, and he doesn't take this approach, I'm innocent. He doesn't do that at all. Pilate himself comes to the conclusion that Jesus is innocent. And when Pilate comes back to the people outside, he just says, look, I've talked to the guy. I see nothing that warrants me killing him. Nothing. So you just do with him yourself. You got some beef with this guy? I don't, because according to the jurisdiction of Rome, we don't care. He's okay. But then Pilate makes this stupid error and an attempt to try and please the people, which all politicians will do at some point in their lives. He says, but you know what? What do you say we let someone go? That's one of our traditions here. What do you say we let Jesus go or somebody else? You want to let someone else go? Yeah, Barabbas, let him go. Barabbas. He's a bad guy. He's a Hell's Angel of the period. So since he gave the choice to the crowd, he had to do what the crowd said. So he hands over Jesus to be crucified. Even though Pilate himself says, I see nothing wrong with this guy. Even though Pilate's wife said, this Jesus guy, you need to be careful. There's something weird going on here. You just need to distance yourself from the Jesus guy. So Pilate himself said that. But Jesus never went through and said, I'm innocent. In fact, Pilate says, are you a king? Remember this interchange? Are you king? Which is actually, that's a technical problem with Rome, because there's only one king in Rome, Caesar. He's the only guy in charge. So this is a good political question. So are you a king? And Jesus says back to him, well, are you asking for yourself or asking for somebody else? That's my vernacular way of how he said it. Are you asking because you want to know or because they're saying that? The interchange is fascinating. You have to go read it, because the interchange with Pilate is fascinating. But nowhere through that does Jesus try and paint himself as innocent. He says, a king? Well, it's exactly like you say. I am a king. What? You're a king? Yeah, but my kingdom's not of this world. Remember that comment? My kingdom's not. Because if it was of this world, you know what would be going on right now? We'd be having a war in downtown Jerusalem. Because you guys arrested me and my followers would rise up, take their swords, and we'd have a war going on right now in the streets, right now. But this is not my kingdom. My kingdom's not from this place, of this place. So they're not fighting for me. But yeah, I'm a king. I'm a king. He never said, this isn't fair. He went to the cross because it was a deliberate plan to save mankind in the process. But this man has done nothing wrong. Something is emerging in this guy that we have to ask what he's seeing and what's going on, because he's changing as he hangs on the cross alongside of Jesus. Fascinating. And then he says some incredible things. Right here. Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom. Okay, wait. Jesus is dying. What kingdom is this criminal see that's coming? I mean, and how does he know it's coming? And how does he know Jesus is a king? Well, it's written on the plaque over his head, King of the Jews. No, I mean, he was taunting this guy. He didn't believe the plaque over Jesus' head any more than anyone else did at the time. But now he's admitting the fact that maybe this guy's a king. And not only that, he's asking a favor of the king while these guys are all minutes away from dying. And it's not like this guy can be part of Jesus' kingdom and he can contribute anything like labor or manpower or money or donations or anything. This guy's not going to contribute anything to the kingdom, because in minutes he's going to be dead. So what basis does he have to ask a favor? And why would he ever think, if he is a king, that he would count him worthy enough that if he just asks, remember me, Jesus would think positively toward this guy? Why wouldn't Jesus say to this guy, not you, you deserve to die today. You're a dirtbag. You've lived your entire life as a dirtbag. You think I want you in my kingdom? I'm sorry. I don't want people like you in my kingdom. Jesus could have said something like that, but he doesn't do that. This statement right here is one of the most perplexing statements in the entire New Testament. It's really astonishing, because we know that this guy was throwing taunts at Jesus tantamount to claiming that Jesus was not who he claimed to be at the beginning of this time on the cross. And now something has completely changed, so much so that it reaffirms Jesus as a king, that there's a kingdom coming, and that there's something about Jesus that would allow him to be part of that kingdom if he just asked mildly. What? We'll come back to that, because it's an astonishing thing. So here, let me just see what Jesus' response is. Truly, I say to you, today you will be with me in paradise. Okay, wait, stop the truck again. Well, let's look at a few things here. This is really informing. When is this going to happen? At the end of the age, 2,000 years from now? No, today. Today. You'll be with me, where? In paradise. In paradise. By the way, that's the same word that's synonymous to paradise in Eden. What? What? Okay, wait. So are you saying that at the end of this day, Jesus and these two criminals will both be dead on the cross? They'll take their limp bodies off the crosses. And Jesus says, yeah, today, you'll be with me in a wonderfully resplendent place. And by the way, you'll be with me in paradise. Instantly, like that. This has disturbed so many theologians when it comes to, well, wait a second, maybe this interchange between the criminal and Jesus doesn't really save you, because it doesn't tick all the right boxes. I mean, it's just too short. It's too mild. It's just something, So maybe instead of actually going to heaven and being saved, he's only going to paradise, which is a different place. So that it created all these fascinating fiction accounts of what paradise means as being different from heaven, because clearly this can't mean salvation, because the thief didn't do enough. He didn't check the boxes right. But no, paradise is paradise. In fact, it's the word that's used at the end of Revelation, when everything wraps up at the end of the age and God makes all things new. We're back to paradise again. We're back to Eden revisited. So it is our final wonderful destination. It is. But Jesus says today? This has also spawned a whole bunch of interesting thinking about what happens in your consciousness when you die. Do you go, in a deep freeze for thousands of years until the end of everything? Or do you go someplace where you sort of kill time, like when you're waiting the outside of a doctor's office? And you're waiting for everything to come to the end. I mean, what happens in between when I die and when the final things happen, which I think could be tens, hundreds, thousands of years away? I don't know, but it's like out there someplace. What am I doing between the time I die and the out there someplace time when Jesus, brings his kingdom? I mean, what goes in between? Well, Jesus says you're there today. What? Which brings up some fascinating theology, because does that mean then that all of us here, will die on different days, different times, different seasons, different ages? And yet, when we close our eyes and we die, and then we wake up again instantly, we all arrived at that same place at the same time, even though our deaths were separated by decades or hundreds or thousands of years? Could that be the case? Well, you can make a case for that right here. You can. What? If paradise is different from all the rest of our final destinations, but it's not. There's a lot of phony fiction that's been generated about this paradise word right here, because this whole interchange is just too darn troubling. It's too simple. It's just too simple. This can't be what it sounds like, really, but it is. So let's go back and we'll just look carefully for a second here about the things that the crook said, because it's such a fascinating thing. Remember, I'll just remind you, he said, look, we're receiving the due reward of our deeds. He said, this man has done nothing wrong. And then he says this golden phrase, Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom. There's a lot of awareness in those three statements. And what I want to posit to you is the fact that for any of us who come to Christ through faith, we take exactly the same steps he took. Now, how he was informed of these things, I'm not quite sure. Holy Spirit may be witnessing what goes on around. I mean, there's lots of ways, but he has definitely come to the point where he believes these things. He is persuaded. And by the way, the word faith in the New Testament, in the Greek, the word word for faith and belief, which are almost synonymous, comes from more of a courtroom term that means to be persuaded. You've gathered the information. You go, okay, this is what I believe. I'm there. I trust that. So he's come to this persuasion about these things. This is the same path we all took when we came to Christ. Because look at the confessions that he makes through all these things. The first confession about himself is that his condition is sinful and condemned. This is the necessary first step in salvation. If you have to understand you're in deep weeds. You have to understand that your own sinfulness has put you in a bad place between you and your Creator. You have to understand that. When pride gets in the way of us being able to make this confession, it's because we think more highly of ourselves than God does. We tend to fool ourselves into thinking that we're more than we really are. It's hard to live with a self-identity that you're actually a nasty person. There are people in the world who have done nasty things and have committed themselves to nasty paths over and over again. Somehow they actually persuade themselves that they're really not that bad, really. I mean, not really. Okay, so I did some poor choices in my life, and okay, so I did embezzle, and I did have a couple people killed, and you go down the mafia arguments, But by and large, we're part of the community, and we're here because the community appreciates us. And so it's hard to picture yourself as being bad. You have to picture yourself as being good, right? And so when you picture yourself as being good, God says, well, if you don't understand that you have a problem because of your sin, I really can't help you. So the first step in salvation is always about, where are you at? And I think with the criminal, it was very easy to realize, well, I'm pinned to a cross. Do I deserve this? Yes, I deserve this. I did those things. Justice has found me. I'm not going to fight that. You have to be honest about your condition, your sinful condition. And you think, wow, what a depressing lifestyle to always tell yourself that you're horrible and you're bad and you're nasty. Well, that's not totally true. The issue is that if you come to realize that that's the case, then you need to come to realize, as the thief did on the cross, that I need help somehow. I need help outside of myself. And so that's what the thief is showing right here. He needs help outside of himself, but he's not fighting the fact that his condition is indeed thoroughly sinful and judged and condemned, and he's getting the payment for what he's done. That's step one in any of the salvation process. Secondly, he proclaimed Jesus' identity, that Jesus was sinless and righteous. Again, we don't know how he came to that conclusion, but he's convinced of it. He's convinced of it because he's confronting the other thief in his taunting. You don't want to do this. This guy is sinless. This guy is righteous. So that's actually the second step in all our processes to coming to Jesus. We have to realize that although we're thoroughly tainted by sin and can't get ourselves out of it, we appreciate good and we try and do some good, but in the end, can we abolish sin in our lives? And we can't. That's the problem. We can see enough good to know that I like the good. We can see enough bad to know I hate the bad. But I can't have enough control to rid myself totally of sin. That's the problem. That's the problem. And it erupts at the most inopportune times, right? I got a problem. But Jesus is the opposite of that. He's totally righteous, totally sinless. Jesus challenged a crowd at one time in the Gospels and said, look, if you know anything I've done wrong, let me know. Anybody? Bueller? Anybody? Jesus challenged them to point something out, and they couldn't point anything out. So although he's confessed, the thief has confessed that he himself is desperately tainted by sin, he looks at Jesus and says, but not him. He's different. He has no sin. He has no sin. That's got to be the second part of our confession as we come to salvation. Next is we have to identify him not just as sinless, but also the ultimate authority of the universe, the one to whom judgment, the responsibility of judgment has been given. He'll judge all mankind. All mankind. He's the king. And the king has the responsibility and the right to make sure that those in his kingdom are really his citizens and the ones he wants to have in his kingdom. And he's going to separate those at judgment. He's going to separate those who should be in his kingdom and those who should not. And not on the basis of merit, by the way, not on the basis of who has more good rather than less good, but totally on the basis of who do you think Jesus is? And is he the king? Is he the sinless king? Is he the one who can die on our behalf and take care of the problem of the wrath of God on us because of our sin? I mean, who is Jesus? That's why all through this, Jesus really announces this big with Nicodemus. Remember in John 3? You got to believe who I am. Belief is everything. Belief is everything. John the apostle, when he writes the gospel, in the very opening breaths of the gospel, says that Jesus came to his own, but his own didn't receive him. But to those who believed in his name, he gave the right to become children of God. To those who believed in his name, that's the reputation, who believe in the fullness of who Jesus is. He's the king. He's the king. So somehow, even though Jesus is on the cross, looks like he's been vanquished by these other guys in town, the Romans as well as the religious leaders of the Jews, although it looks like Jesus has lost, the guy on the cross says, no, I think he's the ultimate authority. I think he's more of a king than all the people who put him on the cross today. Which raises a fascinating question. If you believe that, then why is he on the cross? See, why is he on the cross if he has more authority and power than everyone who put him there? And the obvious answer is, and this is backed up biblically, Old and New Testament, because it's voluntary. Because it was voluntary. He's not a vanquished king. He is a conquering king through his death. So he knew that as well. That's the next step in the whole salvation process, is recognizing Jesus isn't just sinless. Jesus is actually the ultimate authority. He's not just a king. He's the King of kings and Lord of lords. Another thing you have to recognize, which he understood, was that his kingdom was not of this world. Because come on, Jesus is dying in a few minutes. How is he going to establish a kingdom right now? I mean, this is the end of the road for everybody on the cross. And yet he says, when you come into your kingdom, well, how is that going to happen? After death. And so how did the criminal know that? I don't know. But he was convinced of it. He was confessing this right here. He was convinced of it. And again, like we talked about the visit with Pilate, Jesus himself says, right, I'm a king, but I'm a king. My kingdom's not of this world or from this place. It doesn't mean it doesn't apply here, but what he's saying is that it wasn't birthed, it didn't come out of a fallen creation. My kingdom comes from outside of this. It's not of this world. It's not from this world. It's completely different. It's outside of that. But Jesus does pray in his prayer, your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. So he's talking about a kingdom that has pre-existed even earth itself and will have its effect, in its authority and its righteousness on earth. Some now, more a lot later. It doesn't mean that the kingdom of heaven is not for people on earth. It's not for earth. It is, because we experience that. But what he's saying is that it didn't come from this place. This kingdom came from another place outside of this creation. And somehow this thief knows that. And then the most astonishing thing in this entire thing is that somehow he knows that Jesus is merciful. And how do we know that? Because he says to Jesus, you remember me when you come into your kingdom? He's asking a favor. Why in the world would he presume that Jesus is merciful? That if I put in a request, he's going to respond to it. I mean, if this guy's a king, and especially a king of another kingdom, I mean something heavenly and divine and out of this world and spiritual. I mean, if he's that much removed from this place here, why in the world could I ever say to him, remember me, and Jesus wouldn't just say whatever? I don't want to be disrespectful. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it doesn't. Why is this an unfounded presumption on his part? This is my last gasp. I've only got minutes left. Well, Jesus, if anything's going to happen good on your side, can you take me with you? You know, it seems like a desperate attempt. It seems like kind of a jail confession or something like that. Because your future's zero anyway, so you might as well give it a shot. Right? Might as well give it a shot. It was something that particular kind of interaction, not this one, but like that, the caricature of it is what the guy who drew the Dilbert comic recently did. You know him? Scott Adams. And Scott Adams had cancer, and very, very near the end of his life was saying, I finally decided that I've got nothing to lose if I give my life to Jesus. Because if it's all false, whatever. But if it's right, I have a lot to gain. That's called Pascal's wager, logically speaking. If it's false, what do I lose? I'm going to lose anyway. But if it's right, I gain a lot. So Scott Adams went online with his YouTube, and I think about Christmas last year, and said, no, I'm going to do this. It caused a lot of ruckus with a lot of people because they said, well, is he just saying it because he's covering his bets in a way? You know what I'm saying? Like you say, that's the Pascal's wager. It's the bet. There's only an upside, so why not just do it? And we don't really know. We can't judge a person's heart. Maybe indeed he did make a real profession for Christ. Maybe he did do all these steps right here. We don't really know. I don't know. A lot of people have speculated about that. But in this particular case, this guy is not doing that. I don't think he's doing a deathbed kind of profession to Jesus in a Pascal wager way. I think he's just saying, when you come into your kingdom, will you remember me? That is either wildly presumptuous, or he knows something about Jesus that he's communicating in what he says. There looks like to him that even though Jesus is coming into a kingdom and he is the king, that there potentially is a place for him even though he's totally sinful. How can that be? And that's the other thing that those of us who've come to Christ in this process of salvation have come to. We realize that we bring nothing to God when we ask for salvation. We can't make a list and say I'm more worthy than someone next to me. We can't say that I earn this in any way, because we all have already said that we're broken tremendously and we're in debt to the wrath of God. We have problems and we can't fix it. I've tried to fix it. I've spent a whole life trying to be better than I am bad, but the bad keeps coming back and I hate that. But somehow with that tragic permanent taint on us, we have come to understand in this salvation process that God still loves us and God is offering us life if we will put our trust in him on the basis of what Christ has done for us. Somehow we know that there's an open door there, even though we don't deserve it. That door should be shut and locked in our face, but it's not. Why? Because God so loved the world, we're the world, that he gave his son. That whoever believes in him, whoever, that means anybody, whoever believes in him won't perish but have everlasting life. Now we understand there's an opening there in the mercy of God. And that's another thing that we understand about God. His love for us, there's a merciful open door for us if we will just admit these things and confess them. That's the astonishing thing. Now, how it is that this thief came to understand all these things in those painful, brief moments on the cross at the end of his life, I don't think we'll ever know. Maybe God in his graciousness, when we get to heaven and we meet this guy, hi, I'm Jim. Well, hi, my name's Irv. Oh, Irv, what'd you do for a living? Well, I stole from people. I might have caused a couple people to die, but I'm not sure of that. And you're here? You're here in heaven? Yeah. They crucified me. What? Yeah, they crucified me. Wow, so did Jesus. Yeah, saw it. Well, wait a second. I've got 1,000 questions while we're here. How is it that you made this change in such a brief time, in the pain and the misery and the fog of that time? How is it you came to change? It seems so quickly in the account. What did you see? What did you experience? Why did you change your mind? Those are my questions. I'm going to have to tell them, look, sit down. We have to talk for a couple hours. Because when God recorded these passages for us, he didn't give us all the details. It caused us to wonder for centuries, for millennia, what happened. And it brings us to this point right now, 2,000 years later. What happened to this guy? That he actually came to the point of truth about his own sin, the point of truth about Jesus' sinlessness, the point of truth about Jesus being the King of Kings, the point of truth that there's actually mercy in his love for us. How is that possible? What did you see that day? And so maybe in God's grace, he'll allow us that interview. But the question is as mysterious as it is for us. Because when we come to an understanding about our sinfulness, how did that happen? I mean, we could go around and share everyone in the room and say, how did you come to this point where you understood your true nature? Not that you were mostly good, but that, I'm habitually bad in what I do. How did we come to that? And there's a mixture of honesty about as we assess our lives. There's a little bit of that, especially if consequences come knocking on your door because you do something colossally bad. Or something. But to come to that kind of conviction is not something you just come to rationally. The rational part is the start of it. But the Spirit of God starts to bring conviction because the Spirit of God brings conviction of sin. Something Something mysterious happens inside of us when we come to realize that. It's not just us. And when we come to grasp that, we go, oh no. Well, now I've got a problem with the Creator. Yeah, you do, because he gave you life, and look what you've done with it. How's that working out for you? Pride, selfishness, the misery of sin, the misery of sin. So it's a mystery for us to untangle why the crook went through this, but it's also a mystery for us. And then if you go to the next step in terms of who is Jesus, in terms of being the king and being sinless, about being the sacrifice for us, I mean, again, we can start rationally with what the word says, and that's a great start. That's part of God's picture for us. We get that. We read the Bible, we get that. But something inside of us, again, switches because the Holy Spirit would go, wait, I'm persuaded that he's trustable, and I need to put my trust in him. I mean, that was clearly the case when I came to Jesus when I was 15, when he said, basically, you can go your way in life, you can go my way in life. And for some reason, I understood that his way guiding my life was somehow going to be better than my own way guiding my life. And I didn't have too many rational reasons to say that God was trustworthy in that respect. But somehow, something inside of me went boom, and I knew he was trustworthy, and I knew that he loved me. That's a mystery to me. To this very day, it's a mystery to me. And so I said, well, okay. So it's as much a mystery for us, these things, how we came to these points, as it is for anything else. And we're told that even the faith that you have that gets you past your rational understanding to more of a persuasive grasp in terms of your soul and faith and spirit, that second part of that is something that the Spirit does, and it's something that God gives to us. And God gives us faith for that. So we look at the thief on the cross and say, man, what a mystery. I would have liked to know all the pragmatic reasons for what he saw that convinced him. But in the end, like for us, that's only half the puzzle. The other half of the puzzle is what the Holy Spirit does in our hearts. And I think that's really the true and largest explanation for how this guy on the cross, in the midst of that kind of pain and suffering, can come to this understanding and somehow ask in the most passive, unobtrusive way, when you get to your kingdom, can you just remember me? Just remember me. It's a mystery what happened on the cross with him. But what is not a mystery is Jesus saying, today you'll be with me in paradise. So we know that this afterlife is an instantaneous experience for us. At least it was for him. And it's not only going to streets of gold. Jesus doesn't say, today you'll be with me on the streets of gold in heaven. He doesn't say that. Today you'll be with me in paradise. The real benefit of the afterlife in heaven isn't streets of gold. It's being with Jesus. It's being with the one that we admire and have come to love so much. That's the big deal. That's the very big deal. I've asked people many times over the years who aren't believers, and I say, what's your thinking of heaven? What heaven's going to be like? Well, it'd be a lot nicer than here. There won't be any injustice, and we'll get along with one another, and cats and dogs living together, all that kind of stuff. And I mean, they just paint this rosy picture of community that's far beyond all the shortcomings that we have here. There won't be any death. There won't be any suffering. There won't be any tears. Okay, that stuff's all true. But then I always get to the point where I say, yeah, but where's God in all that? Oh, well, he'll be there. But that's not enticing to you? Well, sure. I think that's, okay, I just forgot him. Just forgot him. But when I talk to people who are believers, they'll say, you know what? I can't tell you much about heaven. I can't tell you if dogs and cats will be living together. But I can tell you this. Jesus will be there, and that'll be enough for me. He's the one I'm waiting to meet. He's the one I'm waiting to spend eternity with. He's the one that loved me to the point of the cross. And I go, well, you got it then. So what about streets of gold? It's just pavement material. Dogs and cats living together? My dog and cat get together in our house just fine. But Jesus will be there, and I want to know him. Today, you'll be with me in paradise. What makes paradise paradise? Jesus does. Jesus does. So, kind of to wrap this up, when you go to the crucifixion, let me ask you, if you were there, who would you have been at the crucifixion? Were you like these soldiers here at the base of the cross? Or just chilling? They're just chilling. This is one of the most insightful pictures I think Tissot has done of the whole crucifixion, because you don't see Jesus on the cross. You see guys that it's their job, or they're waiting for someone to die. And then after that, they're going to clean it all up. And then they'll go home that night, have dinner, go to bed. They just don't care. They just don't care. Here's a picture. Tuso picks some guys who just don't care. It's their job. Many people look at the cross, and they look at the crucifixion of Jesus, the death that's there, and go, just don't care. If you want to care about that, that's okay for you, but, I just don't care. I want to go home, have dinner, and go to bed. Are you one of those? Or some of these guys up in this upper right up here? These are the guys who are his enemies. So Tiso puts the guys who are his enemies there, who do care. And what do they care? They care that Jesus really does die. They're antagonistic toward Jesus. They're there to witness the fact that no one messes this up and this guy really does die because we want him dead. That's the peanut gallery on the upper right that are waiting for Jesus to die. So there are people who are very antagonistic toward Jesus today. And they wish that he just was not in anyone's conversation. When you bring up the name of Jesus, many of them get angry and start to walk away. I mean, I don't want to hear it. Don't want to hear it. Don't want to hear it. I don't care if you do it, but I don't want to hear it. Why are you getting so mad? Well, because of you people that always talk about him, right? They're angry and they're against Jesus in kind of I won't say it's irrational. I'll say it's a predetermined kind of way, in a prejudiced kind of way. They don't want Jesus to be anything positive. I'm sorry. So there's those guys. Or are you part of the ones who saw Jesus on the cross, who see Jesus on the cross? They see what happened. And like the centurion who was there at the time, who changed, just like the thief on the cross did from what he saw. Did he see the same things? Did he wonder at the same nature about this Jesus? Because as Jesus dies, he says, truly, this was the Son of God. This is a hardened Roman centurion who for him killing the enemy is a routine thing. Spilling blood is a routine thing. And yet here he is seeing what happened that day alongside of the other thief in his voice saying, this indeed is the Son of God. So who are you in this picture? Many of us are these people like the ones behind the centurion here who are falling in worship. Their faith is not challenged about the identity of Jesus. They know who Jesus is. They may not fully understand why he's voluntarily dying, but they know who he is. And they worship. And that's what we do. And by the way, if you're not a believer, I just give the invitation. It's a private thing you can do to come to him because it's actually a transaction you do not with yourself in a church, but you do with yourself and God himself. With me, it was at the end of my bed, just me and God, just talking. And for this centurion, it's the same thing. This was the Son of God. And believe it or not, from that point, God takes up the ball, and it's his responsibility to move you past that. And he does. And he has for me for 50 years. It's an amazing thing. So this next song we're going to sing actually takes this idea. Jesus, remember me. I don't know what I'm talking about. I know who you are. I know my problem. I don't merit anything from you. But will you remember me? And this song talks about this and come to the altar. Because, I mean, look at these words. Because this is almost from the mouth of the thief himself. Are you hurting and broken within, overwhelmed by the weight of your sin? Well, Jesus is calling. Have you come to the end of yourself? Do you thirst for a drink from the well? Well, Jesus is calling. And for this guy on the cross, Jesus was calling, even as Jesus was dying. Father, we thank you for this, for bringing us to the cross today, and we thank you for your offer to us, to bring life to us as you call to us into the deepest wells of despair that we find ourselves, that we've dug for ourselves. And we thank you that you've called us to yourself and you've called us to life with you. Your arms open wide toward us. And thank you for reminding us that even up until the last breath of Jesus himself, he was working to bring those who would believe with him. And we thank you for doing that with us now in Jesus' name. Amen.